I know we get caught up in social media and, creating great content, making sure that the reels are engaging, having video content, really good imagery. But what often gets missed, and this is where I really want to dive in deep today, is the actual narrative and storytelling. And I have so many thoughts on this, but I didn't want to bring this episode alone, and I knew exactly who to call. So I'm so excited today to be joined by Patti Hall. She is an author, a writing coach, a publishing project manager, and a proud memoirholic. So she really helps people build their books, design them, build them, and tell their story. She is a magnet for story and was built for listening. And it's very true. She's an incredible listener, but even her stories and the way she presents herself, it's really palpable. And I love every time I get to have a conversation with her. So I know that you're going to enjoy her just as much as I am. And if you're catching this on the YouTube channel, you know that she's got some style. She's always bringing it with her glasses. So today I'm wearing my big giant blue frames that are on brand for her colors. So I thought I better show up with having her because she's got some incredible style, and that really reflects in how she shows up and in her stories. So let's dive into today's episode. Hey, and welcome to the Creative Marketing Show. I'm your host, Angela S. Doyon. This is the podcast for ambitious women in business looking to cut the BS, stop dancing for likes, and learn to create honest and genuine marketing strategies that don't cause burnout and overwhelm. Have a question about content creation, social media, or maybe you're looking for more clarity on how to take your business to the next level. This is the show that brings the answers to your questions each and every week.
Yeah. I'm glad you're making big changes. Yeah, I want to hear about that, whether you want to do that on recording or not. I want to literally say, and as you know, I'm an accessory junkie, but I hope you've got Lego.
Big girl bag.
Can we talk about priorities? You better have Lego nearby. So can I have a play date with your son?
Oh my gosh.
I've got some new Lego, and he might have to come here because it's a 4,000 piece kit, but
oh my gosh.
I have a real problem, and I have a major Lego collector in my house.
Do you know, you'd probably actually find this really interesting. I find it fascinating. So Finnegan with Lego, if you give him like the Star Wars or the Spider-Man, he doesn't give a shit. He throws
about the instructions.
Yeah, he is my little engineer. Mm-hmm. And for the longest time, Grandma kept bringing him, and we're like, just the blocks. If you could get him,
just go get him.
Just the blocks and like different sizes and shapes. Because his little brain, this is why he loves his Minecraft. And every year, like, no, I want to get him one that he can actually.
A kit.
He doesn't give a shit.
Care.
He wants to explode. And the stuff that he's built, he's like, he'll do compounds. He's like, look, Mom, here's our house, and here's a little place for Cleo.
Oh, that's it.
And he's building homes, and he's like, and here's the outdoor pool. I'm like, he's designing his dream home.
This might scare you, but that's exactly how I started. So that's how I started on Lego when my kids were young, is that they wanted the kits. Now, I had always wanted it growing up, but it wasn't a thing that my brother was into. There was very little Lego available. It was considered super expensive at the time. Right. But then I started, and I think I've even got some Duplo behind me on a shelf. So I didn't become a collector until, as you know, one of my kids got sick. And then what I did was the city collection had come out. So, and this is part of making creativity connection.
Right.
So that we collected all of the city. I invested in it. So what we did was we put a 4x8 sheet of plywood over our coffee table, and that was how we stayed sane. So we built it all out. And then my best friend has a young child who is now turning 11, and I just gifted it all over to him.
Aww.
So he has a Lego room that can be an engineering dream because he inherited everything that my kids had, everything I'd collected myself, and everything from the city collection. So, and by the way, I have some really expensive ones still in the box downstairs, which I will auction one of these days. Yeah, but that became creativity as connection, because I think even though folks think that Lego is engineered to be pre-designed for you, they're missing the point.
Right.
They're missing the point.
Oh, it's funny because I'm completely opposite as Finnegan. I get like when I have instructions and it's like follow, it's the same thing. Like you give me a piece of IKEA furniture, I'm all for it. I'm like, Mike, don't worry about it. I got it. If I need you for like maybe not even, I can hoist it up on. I got it. I put together every bed frame, I don't know what it is, and so it's so fun when I would see him get so creative. And I'm like, I want to follow the rules, which is actually, I don't feel is normally like me, but when it comes to Lego or building something, I love a little bit of an instruction manual. I don't know. What does that say about me? It's gotta be some kind of weird.
You like completion. So
100%.
writing will be a challenge for you. So we can literally go into, there are two kinds of creators in my world.
Perfect segue. I love this.
Perfect segue. As you know, I have a book coming out later this year that I've pushed out because I wanted to celebrate my own creativity, which sounds ridiculous considering that I'm a person with, by anyone's stretch of the imagination, a successful business being a creative. What? So this blend of business and creativity is big, but I also realized how held back people are by things like instructions. So we don't necessarily like blank journals. I don't like writing prompts that don't give me an idea of kind of what I could do with it. Right. So there's each of us has this desire for instruction and this desire for open-faced creativity, but most of us, because we have been schooled this way, Finnegan has not, congratulations. Right. We've been schooled that without instructions, we will be lost. How dare you? How that's crazy. The judgment of the uber creative, right?
We just had a conversation. I'm sorry to interrupt, but he just 100%. Said to me the other day, they were doing art, and he said, I got graded on my art. How do you grade art? And I said, oh, gosh, you're my little man. Like to me at 7 years old, he said, I'm like, you're right. Art shouldn't be graded because it's yours. So I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I feel like
you didn't. This is exactly the point is that, and we could have that conversation on how this shows up at my desk all the time. So I'm one of those writers and writing coaches. Another thing that makes me a zebra, I use zebra now, not unicorn, but another thing that makes me a zebra in this industry is that someone came to me recently. She's extremely famous, successful by anyone's stretch. And she said to me, like, I just can't write this on my own. And I said, I'm the kind of writer that will empower you to go as far as you can on your own. And if you feel like this doesn't sing the way you want it to, I'll give you a bunch of different things to try on. But the thing about it is someone could say to your child, what if you added a little green to that blue? And his reaction is his art. His reaction is, no, I don't want it to be green, right? Right. And I think that's something that's been schooled out of us and we can take back any time. And I thank social media and the internet for finding ways for creative people to take back creativity for self-identity. Yeah. And I think that makes it possible.
And that ownership and that trust in that ownership, it's such a it really is a beautiful gift. And I'm glad you bring up like social media because there's the woes of it, there's the frustrations of it. It also can, increase a lot of anxiety and stress and imposter syndrome and all of that. But that is exactly why I was so excited to chat with you, because this infusion and this trust of like the validity of your story and how you can share that, whether it's personal and it's in your own journal and putting it down to release that in terms of maybe a form of, we could say self-care, we could say it's a form of therapy, releasing trauma, things like that. And then on the business side, because that's my jam, is like, then how can we infuse more of like our personal story where we don't have to have that separation? So when we can show up on social where it's not like, okay, well, I'm putting my business hat on and I put my nice button-up blazer on and my tight pants. And that's the shit that I'm like, ugh, because I had resisted that for so long and I thought I was wrong. Okay. In the way I showed up. And that's where every time I talk to you, when it's that word of storytelling and that embrace of it is, it's really beautiful and it's really powerful, because I have definitely felt in my own personal business, I'm like, I'm going to wear jeans. When I show up, I'm going to be in jeans. I'm a jeans girl. I'm not going to wear heels because my feet hurt. Like I'm already tall and like, and you know what I mean? Like that square peg round hole type of feeling. Sure. And so I'd love to know your thoughts of like I find you to be very authentic, like in speaking with you, and people are watching on the YouTube channel. Like this is Patti. Yep. You have this incredible style and grace and this energy that you bring. And it's the same thing. If I walked down the street, it would be the same energy. And I think more business owners and just people, like, I don't know where this hesitancy is, and I still see it, to just show up authentically, like with your story, the shit and all. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I embrace it 1000%. And I think what I've done over the years is when I first got into writing coaching, I was trained in a program that then existed called Writing to Heal. And it was because I was working with folks dealing with cancer and folks, even long before my own experience, folks dealing with end of life, because that remains a fascination for me. And there's now something called dignity therapy, which actually is writing therapy for people who are in the end stages of life.
Oh, wow.
And but the best part that came out of Writing to Heal was that I learned that there's something neurobiological about the connection to writing and to what it activates in our brain. So that's one big thing. But imagine if we extrapolated that to think, if I wrote my story, handwriting, type it, okay, there are benefits to handwriting. You'll hear me go off on that in another few weeks in a live talk. But the benefits of actually telling your story is some activity of transcribing a story from your past activates a part of our brain that can't be activated any other way. So parts of writing, there are about 5 steps to getting there. One of them is the pincer reflex of actually holding a pen is a trigger for our brain. Only humans have this. Only humans do this as a form of communication when you think about it. So that's one of them, all the way through to when we go into our far distant memories, and often the ones that have been closeted away due to traumatic response. There's a freedom in reliving it that means we'll never relive it the same way again. So there's a completing task to executing a memory into this space that concretizes it, and our brain views it in another way. It's no longer a challenge to us. And I watch this happen with writers, storytellers, and a lot of content creators who are my clients who go online, is once they've transcribed, for example, a long post or a blog, they are forever changed by it because they look at it as content that they're free of now. This is for people who don't want to tell that vulnerable story. I have a client who's a surgeon who tells me this story about, now she works with bariatric surgery patients. And I said to her, was there ever something in your personal story that connected you to this kind of surgery? There are 100 different specialties in surgery. Why dealing with critically obese patients? And she said, oh, there's nothing in my personal story. She said, I just really believe in these people. Then I sent her away to do some homework for me, and she came back with, her mother was chronically and critically obese as a child.
Interesting.
And I never said to her, hey, you didn't bring that up in your story, because that connection was already made for her. It just didn't occur to her in one space to tell a story that she thought belonged in another. And this is what happens to us with storytelling when we transfer it to social media and we transfer it to the public. Once we hold it in one space and then transfer it to another, it's not the same kind of threat to us. It doesn't take you to that critical point of flight, fight, or freeze anymore.
Right.
It becomes something you can manipulate, which is literally why I invented this next book that I'm putting out, because we can take content and we can deepen the writing of it to turn it into something else, make meaning of it, make it a lesson or a teaching for someone else. What a gift humans have.
And that own gift to ourselves, to have that release and that trust that we can put that out there, no hesitation, no holds bar. That's so interesting. Because, and that's part of, even just when I hear it a lot, like, I hate selling. I don't want to sell. I don't want to be the salesperson. But when we can, I don't know what your thoughts are on this. I'd love to hear that. When we can replace like the selling, like that's where storytelling, I think, really comes in, because when we can sell from an experience of like transformation, things like that, the results we've had, or the personal connection, like, hey, I've been there, I struggled, and then I found this solution, and how can I lend that to you through my story that hopefully will resonate. And I think and I struggle with that too. Trust me, like I'm not saying like I'm a great storyteller. I'm starting to really recognize it. And again, like I think you said the vulnerability.
Yes.
There's always that little like, am I gonna be judged? Or people can be like, oh, you're feeling sorry for yourself.
Oh, poor you.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
there's no vanity in telling our own story. Just think about that for a second, right? There's so much vanity in what we perceive to be marketing. But when did marketing become, and you've taught me this, and it's been a big morph in my business, because I recently had someone challenge me that I should be marketing myself. And I said, but I already have enough business for the next 2 years and I've closed my practice. How inauthentic would that be if I'm out there going, hey, you need to work with me, you need help with your story? So instead what I'm doing is saying writing is hard. And what I'm morphing to is asking the hundreds of people that have worked with me to tell their story of working with me. And that's how I'm getting around. It isn't my story. Yep, I have written my entire life. I know what the struggle is, and I don't think I'd have as much to value to give if I hadn't written multiple of my own books and struggled to write my own now. Great.
Right.
But you know what? It's other people saying, here's where I was, here's where I got to. It was vulnerable, but Patti held space for that. Don't do this alone. Get the help you need, because I really don't need to be everybody's coach. I don't need to be everybody. There are a lot of ways to get support, and that's exactly the thing. When you feel vulnerable, ask people whose opinion really is objective and say, like, did I sound like a self-pity party over there? And they're going to go, no, I was so glad you said that because I was thinking it too.
Right. I often talk about this because, you know, when I did an episode a little bit while back about asking for feedback. And I know that that's also very vulnerable to say, like, what did you think? Like, are you enjoying this? Like,
sure.
It's a heavy load. But it's something that I preach a lot about, because it's not to fuel the ego of like, okay, I just need to be validated that you
not
like
at
me.
all.
It's more of like putting that ask out there, but also being ready to be like, give me your honest feedback. I do this through anonymous surveys too inside my community, where I'm like, I would really love to know, like, if I'm missing a piece. So, you know, you put a little bit of yourself out there. But there is something, maybe it is feeling validated. Like, I will say, anytime I get a message or like on a DM or an email after a podcast, and they're like, thank you, you hit the note on that. And I'm like,
yes. Oh, thank God.
Thank you so much. Because I was like, actually, I almost didn't post that one. And they're like, oh my God, you almost didn't share that one. I'm like, I really almost didn't. I didn't want to come across like this. And same thing when I'm doing calls and with my members, you know me, I'm a chatterbox. And once I'm on,
100%.
I'll keep going and going. And so I feel like, I don't know if you've seen the musical Hamilton, where I feel like Alexander Hamilton, like, am I talking too much? Sometimes I get overexcited, shoot off at the mouth. Like, that is me. But then when you get that feedback and people, or the head nod, or the little like, thank you, like,
yes.
And then I would feel so silly if I didn't embrace the chatterbox in me, the like,
beautifully said,
hands waving, and I'm really excited. And okay, your turn. Like, okay, now I also need to remind myself, hold space for others, lay out the floor as well. Like that, I know that's something I work on too.
Yeah, you know, there's something about knowing that by putting your story out there, you're laying the floor open for the next person. Right. We do this, there's communication breeds community. So this is why we read nonfiction. And I mean, this is, you know, this is completely selfish, but when I wrote my first memoir, when I published the first memoir, Loving Large, 10 years before I wrote it, I wanted to help people. But when I wrote it, by the time I got to it, it had morphed into something that simply had to be done. So expect that your reflection upon what you put out into the world is going to change over time. Right. What feels vulnerable today will not feel vulnerable 2 weeks later. And it may be because you got feedback, and it may simply because you can't step in the same river twice. Water will have gone under the bridge and you're going, oh, well, I got that off. I'm actually going to go and say this. And I actually think people need to hear that. Our progression, writing is iterative, storytelling is iterative. Our brains love generative processes, which means they can't create the exact same thing ever again. Right. Because we pull fish hooks out of a bowl, right? We catch another thought, we see another color, we think of another thing. You telling it one way, one time, gives birth to a million other possibilities for listeners, readers, and yourself. So create it for yourself to a little bit of that squidgy feeling. Right. And you open the playing field for everyone else.
I could not have said that any better. This makes perfect sense, that breakdown. And I think, you know, maybe for a thought, I wrote down the word help when what you mentioned, like you wanted to help people. And I think that's where sometimes that gets lost, where people caught up in their own vulnerability and scarcity forget that what they can share can actually help. And I'd like to think that, you know, a lot of people I've come across, that is a big part of their values of, like, especially service products, right? I want to help people. I want to help them solve X, Y, Z. So I love that where this is going, because that is the service. Yes. And where that can come from. And for yourself, obviously, starting with that book and where it's transcended to continue to help people over and over and over again. And it's the same thing, like, that's what I want to do. I like helping women in business. I'm like, where can I fill in the blank for you? Where can I help you? And then sometimes, a lot of the times it does come back to well, here, let me share this. This happened to me. Yep. And like, how many times have we said that, or we come from a place of that experience? So I love that. And it makes me want to ask you, and thinking from our audience's lens, because for the longest time, until I met you, I was like, there has been this, I love biographies. I love real stories. I love human experience. There's just something where you can always find something in someone, whether they're like incredibly famous, successful, and you're like, oh my gosh. I love documentaries, like the Jennifer Lopez documentary, and like all of it, where I'm like, oh my, there, I love the struggle story. Like, there's just something where you can find a little piece of yourself in anybody's story, I think. But I never thought until I met you that well, why would I write a story?
Yes.
I'm just Ange. Nobody, like, I have an online presence, I have the podcast, but like, really, who gives a shit?
I know.
But the more I've spoken with you and understanding, my own experience, and I'll say, as we all have, we've been through a lot. And I know I got some shit that I had to get through, like loss, trauma, the stuff that I don't openly share on social. But when it comes to, I'm getting to my question, because I really felt now again, I messaged you when I was in Florida. I'm like, oh, you've inspired me. Like that pen to paper, and it's like, it's not just journaling. I wrote it as a story, but my story. And as I was doing it, then my focus was like, well, even if this story, I'm like, it's for me, but then I also think of my son, where I'm like, oh, this could be a really good story for him one day. Right. And so anybody who's listening, they're like, maybe like, I'll be cool to write a book. I don't even know what I'd write about. Nobody gives a shit about my story. What would you say to that?
So there's a message somewhere, right? And if the only message that you unearth is that I've been through some shit, that becomes, wouldn't it be cool for Finnegan to know this one day? That's enough, but then extend that out, right? Is that there are a gajillion Finnegans who don't know their mother's story. There are a gajillion people who don't know that what they're feeling today will pass, is survivable, can be endured. And for me, it isn't always just the story, it's this message. So I usually spend time deeply with people when they have endured and they don't know what to do with coming out the other side. So, but what about the people before that? So when people are at the book point, they're usually ready to make meaning of their experience. But before that is all the endurance stuff. So I always say you can write too soon, but you can never write too late. So catching someone in the process. And this is my story entirely. I wrote a memoir. I have another memoir that it's in the works. I couldn't have written or the published version of my book any sooner than I did. In fact, I tried. I wrote many iterations of that.
Right.
And that just told the story. That was what we experienced. That was what I went through. I was way less kind in my earlier versions because time does breed kindness and a way more empathy than we have, right?
Right.
But if I'd written it too soon, if I'd published it too soon, it wouldn't have had the legs that it had. It had to get to the point of what message is in here. And I'll tell you, there's a secret thing, and your people will need this especially, is dig into your why. So when you lose track of your why, and I mean, this is Simon Sinek, this is a whole bunch of people who talk about human psychology and marketing, but it's deeper than that. The why is what will get us to do the thing that's tough. So the why will get you to complete that vulnerable post. Something else might make you start. It might be that fire in your belly, the cauldron's bubbling, but your why is what will get you to the page. And the why is the only way someone will ever complete a book, because that why has to be so powerful that you can override all that self-talk, all that defeatism, all that monkey mind, all of that inner critic.
Right.
Every time you complete a post, you've overridden the human instinct to not share, to protect, to stay small. And not just human instinct, but the schooling that society has given us. So I think for me, one of the big pieces is you ask yourself why you feel uncomfortable. Answer that question, but even more important, ask yourself if there's a why that is way more important than the shit you're feeling right now. Because if you're feeling, oh my God, nobody wants to know that like I had this experience. Nobody wants to know that my parents put me to bed too early and I was really alone and isolated and afraid of the dark. True story.
Right.
Nobody wants to know that. Guess what? That's in my next book. It's actually the opening of my next book. And it's a heartbreaking story of how I learned to feel rejected because I was physically isolated in another room and told not to come out. It wasn't an abusive situation. It was a trying to train me to stay in my bed, when what they didn't realize was that my little mind was creating monsters in the dark. My closet and my bed were infested with the underworld, not in a dark way, just in a little kid way. But if I didn't tell that story, who else would talk about fear? Who else would talk about not having an abusive childhood, but having things that happened that made you who you are? And that's where this mission comes from. This mission for creativity for me is now about, we can create monsters in the dark. I can also now create other worlds in the dark of my mind, and that doesn't scare me, right? I learned how to harness that thing. So telling the story is one thing, but when you start to talk yourself out of it, you got to go into the why. That's what book authors need. But way before that, go into the why. Why does this feel so important? If you don't have the answer, ask somebody. Tell it out loud. We never lie to ourselves when you say it out loud.
Right. That's brilliant. And that is such a light switch, because, and I can completely attest to that. Every time I thought of, well, I'd love to write a book one day. And that's just that's the engine. Like, I just love creativity. I'd also love to be in commercials. I'd love to be a voiceover actor. Like,
sure.
The whole like, oh, wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? And I had this, like I said, I had this beautiful experience when I was in Florida. And because I shut everything off, I turned social media off. Everything was out of office. Everything was scheduled. It was 9 days where I'm like, this is family time. And it was a beautiful, beautiful moment. And that's where, I made the point of not calling my phone. I was like, where's my camera? Like, I associate, everything was an association of like, it's a camera. That's the only tool it is. It's nothing else. And I read like 4 books. Anyway, my point was, when I really shut it off, and then you're kind of left with sitting at the beach while my son's boogie boarding with dad. And it's like, well, I've been reading all day. I finished that book. What did I do? And it's like,
you hear the voice in your head, don't you?
I don't know if that's that waves crashing in that beautiful air. And it's just that, like, the surrounding everything, but also, well, I'm not going to pick up my phone because there's nothing on there that I need except for the Zac Brown Band music playing in the background, giving me a vibe. And then it was okay. And it was picking it up. And I didn't journal too much. And I say journal, like, I think that's what I intended. But the way all of a sudden it was just pouring out, because I think there was also a clarity, which I'd love to talk about that, because if I had been checking social media and like said, like, I'm going to pop in, I'm going to like do it. I wouldn't have had that clarity, because I think I created this, oh, my dog's jingling. I wouldn't have had that clarity to sit with myself, like, because I wasn't distracting as much. I really felt present. And then as it was like these memories kind of came flooding in, and it was a lot of this association with my mother, who passed when I was young, and being in that moment with my son. And it was just, again, that was the why, where, and you just said it so beautifully, and I've just literally had that light bulb moment where now I feel like, yeah, that actually makes sense, because as I was writing it, it was for me, but with the why of like, imagine if he could understand this one day. Like, he's 7, turning 8, but like, I was 13 when my mom passed, and I have her journal, and there's not too much of a journal, but there's just enough where I'm like, oh, I'm holding on to this, these written words, but I can hear it. And I'm like, I wonder what she was thinking. And to be honest, this might sound weird, but even some of her journal felt a little bit filtered. Well done. And I say that because I have had conversations with her best friend, and what we say to our best friend. Like, so there was this part of, it was almost like this journal was a kind of story like to hang on to, to make it not as scary. I don't know. There was a part where part of it felt for her, part of it kind of felt like it was left for me in the best way. But there was a part I'm like, oh, I think you filtered a little bit, knowing that maybe this would end up read. Okay. And so that was really intentional as I started writing, and these thoughts that still, I brain dump them out, where that otherwise, I don't want it to be filtered, because I want it to be honest. And you know what? especially family. My son and I are very close. Mike and I, we're a very tight knit family. You can know when it's like, there's more to
Stop
that
right there. Yeah.
right?
You stopped yourself.
Yeah,
Sure.
so I found that was a really interesting thing. And so when I, anytime I haven't done it often, I kind of find when I have that space and I feel really called to, but that's the why is for him, but in the unfiltered way, to make sure, like, don't sugarcoat. And it's a lot about where my story was a lot of
course,
younger years. I'm like, I want to be really, and that's the why for me. And then the why for him was, no bullshit.
Yeah, you said a lot of things there, and a number of them I want to unpack. First of all, I want you to start doing creativity teaching with me. I have a couple of brilliant ideas of how we could tag team on this. I have a series in mind. Maybe that's live, and maybe that's different. But I just invented a course in my mind. So
I love that.
I want to pick up a couple of things. You picked up clarity, you picked up no bullshit, and you picked up this filter thing. So clarity for me is water running free through a hose. Okay.
Right.
That's clarity. But you got to turn that the control for that hose on somewhere. That's a massive thing. You give people the ability to say no or to turn down or to continue playing small or keep that hose turned off. They'll keep it turned off. Why? We've been schooled by each other.
Right.
You know how babies cry until they're encouraged not to for some reason? And little kids learn not to cry because we tell them not to.
Right.
I mean, crying isn't a great example, but as you know, it's the same as being loud. It's the same as using your playground voice inside. Okay, we all get schooled on that.
Yeah.
So that natural filter is about a deep desire for belonging. So be really compassionate around that filter. That filter is keeping you alive. That filter is keeping your internal sense of protection alive and well for you. It's a boundary that once you cross, you know you're into discomfort, but it's about the ultimate desire that people have, which is belonging. Right. We don't want to be singled out. So you get singled out, somebody tells you, oh, we don't write those things here. We don't use those colors in our art class. Good little people don't say those things to others on the playground, right? We get schooled from the moment we are told that if our parent puts something in our mouth, we stop crying. We're schooled to cry to get that thing put in our mouth, right?
Right.
So be kind around this filter. That the nozzle on a hose, I consider this my best friend. And mine is wide open all the time.
Right.
When it is, and it's teal, by the way, it's completely on brand. But when that nozzle isn't turned fully open, that's a red alert for me that I am not feeling like I'm safe. I'm not doing a thing that I should, or I'm not doing it the way that serves me. So clarity and alignment are really close for writers. So I also want to say that all of us start with a trickle in the hose because guess what? We don't want to flood the plant. We don't want to satiate the ground. We don't know what's safe, right? This is all safety and belonging stuff. But the idea is that the filters keeping you alive is also something that creatives fall back on and use as an excuse.
Right.
Oh, I can't. Why? That schooling comes in. What would they think? How will they judge me? What will they know? So I have
or it hasn't been, I've never seen anything else like it.
Nobody has done this, right? Which, if you think about it, there isn't a song that hasn't been written and there isn't a book that hasn't been told in some way, shape, or form. But I also say there's room for yours. Just stop the filter. So write for yourself first. Apply the filter way, way, way later. And that is the biggest rule of writing long form nonfiction.
I'm hearing you. I'm nodding my head.
Right for you now.
Yes.
Get it out of you. So you writing about any moment in your life, whether you were 13 or 8, you writing about it turns it into something that you can do something with. We don't know that until we do it.
Right.
I recently found a piece of paper that I wrote a page in a journal. I keep all my journals, and I'm recently realizing that sometimes I use one page in it because I'm really picky about the paper and the pens I use.
Gosh,
if I don't like that journal, I keep it around in case I want to take another try at it. But some
and at
of
the beginning of this episode, we talked about this amazing journal. I'm going to put that in the link for Marnie and Michael.
Oh my God, the Marnie and Michael journal is just set me free. It's coming to Iceland with me next week, and it's completely pushed some other journals out of my life that aren't very happy about it. I found this page in my journal about a time when I had first decided to leave my marriage. And it said the things that exactly the way they happened. I wrote it fresh and I wrote it down. I had what we would call clarity of thought. It was an open tap. I needed to record this because I didn't know, honestly, if I'd believe it later. But my why then was just get this down, because you don't know, you got to trust that instinct to get it down. And that communicate it's a cry for help. It's a desire to be heard. It's I don't know who I'm going to be later. Somebody needs to know this exists. And I tore that piece of paper out of the journal and I threw away the journal, and I have no reason to keep this piece of paper except to remember that at the time I was loyal enough to myself to just put it down.
Right.
Remember something, nobody has to read a damn thing that you write. Journals are private. And if you're living with somebody that's going to read your journal, you're living with the wrong person. So you say, hey, it's my journal, don't touch my journal.
Yep.
And our children can understand that. My dog doesn't carry my journal around, and my kids would, 30-year-old children would never walk around with my journal in their face. They would not touch a blank sheet of paper.
Right.
So remember that once you lay those ground rules around you, this is just in service of you. If you don't know the why right now, trust that your body is telling you a why for later, and just put it away.
Yeah.
Disown it. Put it away.
I love that you said that, because I'm sure that there's probably a lot of listeners tuning in that, and I'll raise my hand first. You've just brought something out where my husband won't read my journal. Then again, like we're a very respectful place. I don't have ever have that doubt. But I will admit, as you were saying that, there are definitely times where I have taken my own moment and written in my journal and written it with the faucet not fully open, where it's just a little bit, just in case if this ever got in the hands of someone, I don't want to sound like an asshole, right?
Completely.
And so I'm really glad you said that, because this is going to be something I'm going to remember every time I get in my journal. It is really just for me. And most of the times it is. But yeah, no, I'll completely, my omission is, I have done that where I'm like, yeah, where I've even probably filtered myself, like, just in case I get hit by a bus and somebody comes to clean out my stuff. We're like, wow, what is going on?
It's the reason we wear underwear, Ange. Okay, it's the reason we wear underwear.
Right. Totally. It's so funny. My father-in-law, his wife, who's like a mother-in-law to me, and she's so amazing. But on that note, that's why she's like, they lived in California for years. She's like, that's why I wear pajamas, because if that earthquake comes and I gotta run out, I'm not going to be naked. So that protection.
Let's scroll back to something social media has, I think, done for us. And maybe social media didn't do this, but you know what did this for us? These really cool things.
Right.
Oh, and look, I actually have a photo that you took of me and reposted of me on my phone. It literally has your handle and my handle on the screenshot, because you got up on a ladder and took a picture of me at a photo shoot. And here's what it's done for us. It's made note-taking and compulsive note-taking not just socially acceptable, reflex. Right. Cool, right? So you always have a notebook at the ready. And if you don't like the notes on your phone, honey, you've got a notebook at the ready. Talk to it. Oh, email is how I write
this is
now.
This is my 2 a.m. post where I had
the truth is
I'm like, maybe I'll do a podcast series in addition to this, and I'm like, I woke up at 2 a.m. and it was, the truth is, because I lead with that a lot. Hey, the truth is, anyway, I love that. But that's the notes. That's where the busy brain.
Yeah. The other side of that is, have you heard how many people say, not gonna lie, not gonna lie, ... This is an opening to say, do you see what that says about a person? The truth is, everything that comes out of our mouth is the truth. We shouldn't have to tell people it's the truth.
But the not gonna lie is that.
Not gonna lie is like, not gonna lie, because I don't want y'all thinking I made this stuff up. That's something, again, society has done to us. If we write it and say it, and we speak it out loud, which is ostensibly what social media is, we speak it out loud, it better damn well be the truth. Because that's how human society has existed since time immemorial. Telling stories out loud is how we kept our families together. It's how we learned to avoid bears. It's how we have taught each other to cook, where to get the best food. It's also how we transferred our legacy. It's how women learned to survive period pain and childbirth. If we don't speak it out loud, we're not helping anybody.
Right.
And, someone brought a quote. This is completely off topic, but I love how you open up and you just like turn my tap on. So someone brought a quote to my attention today in this fabulous online group that I'm in. And there's this quote by George Bernard Shaw, where he says that he considers his talent to belong to the whole community. He says, I'm of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community. And as long as I live, it is my privilege to do for that community what I can. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die. And what he meant was he was a communication vehicle. He was, for all of those things, a candle that burned so that other people could light up as well. So he said, I do this for me. He produced the material, but he believed that his gifts were in service of community. And that's what this thing about message and mission is for me.
Right.
You don't know why you're being told to write about a moment in your past. And honestly, it doesn't matter if you ever do a thing with it. But I've learned how many people wish they knew what to do with it years later. You remember that whole thing about you can't write too early, you can write too early, but never too late?
Yeah.
Just sit with it. There's an element of faith in self-expression. This is where that risk and fear comes in for the people in your community. They say it and they have that little bit of fear about not knowing how it's going to land.
Right.
Screw how it's going to land. Trust that you are in service of the message that's percolating through you and put it out in the world. And I know some folks in your community because you connected me on your group podcast for Women's Day. And I know how brave they feel when not just their message is showing up, but their personality is showing up. Okay, right. Video has changed, right? It's like, what is it? Video changed the radio or whatever that was. You know the song. That's right.
Oh my gosh, that's going to be my head all day.
Something changed the radio.
Video changed the radio star.
That's it. Thank you.
That's right.
There we go.
MTV, yeah.
And so the thing is it has changed.
Right.
So how I show up, yep, you and I have got our glasses on, we're on brand, we got our stuff going on, photos of us are going to be whatever. But you know what that is? That's a hook.
100%.
That's something to say, just pay attention over here, and they'll go, oh, that's cool. Look at those two women with funky glasses on. What are they talking about? And they're in.
Right.
And someone today will hear this and realize that you only have to be courageous for an instant before your message hits the planet. And that courage is a moment alone with yourself where you say, I feel like I need to say this. Should I say this?
Right.
Lose the should and turn the tap on.
Well,
it's only a moment of courage.
Yeah. And I love that you say that, because even you probably noticed, I didn't send you any questions before this episode. And that was really intentional. I did say, I'll follow up with some cues, but really, I just want to kind of talk about like storytelling in terms of marketing and how it lends, just kind of yada, yada, yada. Because I knew, this is the thing. If this is our first conversation, I do believe in being prepared. That's the part of my brain that likes the instructions. But then there's that other where I'm like, I know, like my walk this morning, I'm like, should I have maybe said, I'm like, I don't know. I just feel like I felt really called that there's such fluidity that's always happened in our conversations. And that that's the cutting of the bullshit where I'm like, if I was, okay, next question, then it's just there. You lose that, like you said, that whole faucet where we can just let it flow. And I'm enjoying this so much. So I just wanted to say that, like, I'm very glad that I trusted that we didn't need the roadmap for today in order to cover so many different bases that I didn't even know where this was going to go.
And hit the nail right on the head. It's authenticity, isn't it?
Right.
So even if we hadn't met, and everybody needs to know, although we have met and we have had business-based discussions, we don't know each other personally.
Right.
We don't know.
We need to go for coffee.
We totally need to hang for coffee and buy typewriters. It's all true. The thing is that what we know is we follow each other online, we respond to each other, and we know that we are real people. So here's what it is. You've told me enough with a level of honesty that I know you're my people.
Right.
And I also know that I don't have to
very freely and willingly. And that's where I know, you know what I mean? Yes. So it's reciprocated.
Yes. And that really, really counts. That moment of connection that your message can have, you cannot possibly know the exponential effect that it'll have. And this is something that comes back to my social media. And you and I have had the discussion. I'm a great example for you of a person with a business that really, I don't need quote unquote marketing. I know the luxurious position I'm in. I am referral only, super high touch, uber exclusive. But you know what? My brand has never reflected that because I thought I had to show up like other people did. So recently somebody said to me, you know what, Patti, I think your website needs a do-over. And I smiled to myself because I know her clients and I know where she's coming from. And I said, I don't want to look like any of your other clients. I felt disrespectful, but I don't want to look like anyone else, because if you can't show up and cry to me, tell me that you've got a 7-figure business, if you can't come here and also say, you know what, I need to write a book because this is the first of a series because women aren't figuring this out. I don't presuppose the reason you come to me to get support. I'm open arms.
Right.
If I can't be me, how will you know those arms are wide open?
Right.
If I show up looking like someone wants me to, other than authentically, you won't get what you need.
Yeah.
And it's about the person who comes to you getting what they need, whether you provide gorgeous handmade journals or you provide a coaching service or any of the things. So there's your authenticity invites authenticity. And I think people miss that. Now, that's
Agreed.
not to say that I want to show up looking like shit, but as you know,
Oh,
there
for
are
sure.
moments where I show up exactly as I am. So I've done a recent experiment where, and I don't have a massive following, you know my brand really well. So for the last couple of months, I super pulled back on social media. And I was exhausted with it. I was writing blogs. I decided to focus on my writing and my writing coaching more than basically I didn't want to sell anything because as soon as I attract attention, I don't have anything to give people and I'm closed
Right.
to new clients. So I was really conscious of not being inauthentic and showing up and saying, hey, get into my program because I don't sell a program, as you know. So I pulled back, and what has crazy happened is my numbers have increased more than ever. So
Interesting
it's
how that
almost
works,
not
eh?
explainable, but I know there are so many people who are referring me, tagging me. I cross post a lot, I repost a lot, I support my clients. I don't know what is happening, but that's been a real oddity. Now that won't exist over time. I mean, that always tails off, right? I can't
Right.
disappear, but what I can do is choose what to show up with. And this is something that you have coached me on so often. So guess what? And now sometimes I throw up a picture of me and it has a video that follows it. And sometimes that's because that message was burning in me.
In
And
that moment.
in that moment, nobody said to me, oh, you didn't have a beautifully done graphic on top of that.
You
It was a
didn't check
picture
your
of me.
ideal timing because you should.
That's
I get it. We
right.
hear all that noise,
Sure we do.
and that's where people feel the overwhelm and that pressure.
Oh, for sure. So the other day I put up a picture of me, which I was just going to go pull down because I'm sick of looking at the picture on my social media. I put up a picture of me in a blue beret that literally is in a blue beret and a matching sweater. I was in my favorite diner. And the person that owns the diner goes, oh my God, you look so good. I got to take your picture. It's like, that's okay.
I love it.
She took it on my phone. I sent it to her. And the other day I had this burning desire to support somebody that had just shown up across my desk. I filmed the video. I put the picture up. I let the reel run after it. And of course, I heard in my mind, you know, Patty, you could have taken 5 minutes on Canva and put the cover on this. And I said, no, I don't need to. And I have had a deluge of messages from people saying, oh my God, you're just so you on social media. That's so your color. This is all your thing. Nobody even cared that the video was a different moment that same day when I
Right.
took the beret off. But you know what? I wouldn't have had what I would call courage to do that before. I would
Right.
have overthought that. And if you hadn't talked to me so much about how authentic my brand is, people don't care as long as I show up. Yeah,
Right.
I still get better engagement from my dog than I do for myself. But I mean, Tundra is beautiful and she's
Right.
on brand. I just want to
Yeah.
say. But you know what? People just want to hear what comes out of my mouth when they're having a day where their writing's not flowing. And
Right.
if that helped, fantastic. Loyalty to that open channel, that is what people in small business need to feel more than what they look like, how they show up, and are they on brand.
Yeah.
Loyalty to that message coming through.
100%. And that authenticity. And I talk about this a ton because it's frustrating. And the number one thing I hear from my audience, from members, is it's the overwhelm.
Yes.
And I actually had this call yesterday in my Q&A, and two people came up and they're like, I'm just overwhelmed. They didn't have a question, like, I'm just kind of feeling really overwhelmed. Okay. And we got into this discussion of the get-tos and the have-tos. And I said, okay, unfortunately, there's two lines. And if you can get out a pen and paper, if you're putting social media under a have-to, that's immediately is something that I'm going to give you some grace to take off from that pressure. And I'm sure there's other things there's pressure and overwhelm. But that one thing, and I think people feel like, well, I have to. Because you know why you have to? I'm doing my air quotes, is because we're so inundated with everybody else trying to hawk and sell their services as social media experts. And I use that in quotation marks as well. Good. You have to do this. And if you want to get to this, you have to. And we see it, we hear it. We're inundated with it because we're spending a lot of time in that scroll. Where I'm like, who the fuck said you have to? Why are you believing that? I don't care. Oh, but that person, they must be credible, validated because they have 30,000 followers, they have 100,000 followers. I don't give a shit. Sell your soul and just like say you have to and buy my course and I can teach it. Like, you know, I'm someone who has digital like courses and memberships. but it comes from a place of service. I'm like, can I help?
Yes.
I have
This
never
will
been,
help people. Yes.
I'm going to help you get to 10,000 followers. Not going to do it. And if that's what, and I even have had that on sales pages. I'm like, if you are here to get to a milestone of 10,000 followers,
I'm not your person.
Yeah, close the tab, because this is not what is going to come.
Right.
And second to that, that overwhelm comes when we're not showing up authentic. So we feel like we have to change what we're wearing. I'm in like this, I wore this yesterday and it's my walking stuff, but I'm like, it's my most comfortable sweater. I'm in I'm comfortable. And so when people feel like they have to show up a certain way, so it's like if you have to take off your sweater to put a blouse on,
yes,
immediately you're giving yourself a disservice, because that's not what makes you comfortable. And so, and it's the same analogy of what you see. So if, whatever I show up on Instagram, and sometimes I look a little bit nicer because I like to dress up, whatever I'm feeling in that moment. But otherwise, actually, I have 2 points to this, and this is my, like, my hands are going. Is when people get overwhelmed because they feel like they have to show up a certain way, but ideally, and then they're burnt out in their business and they're not enjoying it as much. Where now I'm like, I love my membership. It's like my favorite thing. So anybody who sees me, and when they're in the Q&A, I'm like, yeah, I didn't dress up for you, but I'm going to dish it for you. And I'm comfortable and I'm feeling really good because I'm not, in a tight pants. And it's the same thing. Like, if people saw me walking down the street, I'm like, yeah, I'm in my joggers. Like, the same, like, it's what makes me feel comfortable. And when I'm comfortable in my skin, in my clothing, in my home, in my space. Sometimes I record podcast episodes in my living room. Why? Because it's comfortable. And I can look out the window and I can. And even sometimes I do meetings at my kitchen counter. I don't feel this pressure of like, well, it has to be here, and I have, or I'll blur my background. I hate for anybody to see my kitchen sink, right? Yeah. And then we waste, and that's a time waster. It's such a time sucker.
Good point. And I want to flip it on you right there. What are people losing? What would people be losing of you if you showed up the way you thought you should? What wouldn't they be getting? Like, spin it back to me. What wouldn't they be getting?
Well, they wouldn't be getting, my members who are listening will probably understand, they wouldn't be getting the crazy hands. They're like, oh my gosh, you guys, I'm sorry. I'm going to let you have the floor for a minute, but I just got to say this. The unfiltered, the like talking really, really fast. And okay. Or the F-bombs, or the, I don't know. Just,
what they wouldn't get? They wouldn't get that you care. Totally. They wouldn't get that you care. So you wouldn't be the person they'd reach out to and they'd say, I'm just in overwhelm right now. And those two people wouldn't have anyone else to say that to. They would pivot their business. They would do something that was inauthentic for them. They'd have a few shitty days and they wouldn't feel supported in the world. Then what are we all doing here?
Right.
If that person isn't showing up honestly, who have we got? Yeah. Right. There's
one of the best lines out there is what you see is what you get. And like, that's 100%. Kind of become the motto where I'm like, I can't bend for you. My body physically, my mind, and this was actually something that I had written down. Like, that's a good line. And I'll say it verbatim, but it was just, I remember being in a situation like, when you have to bend so much of yourself out of what's actually true to you, you bend too much. At some point, it's just like the same thing, you break. And that's what people get, that overwhelm, or I'm feeling stuck, or I'm not getting that momentum or that growth, or I don't feel connected to the work.
Yes.
Because we're bending and we're stretching. And I think of that analogy often where when it's the same thing where I just can't, I try to do the yoga, but my body is just like resisting. So like maybe I do something different where I like to walk and doing something else. Like what is going to make it? It's the same thing. Like, oh, you should be doing this. You should be taking what is right for you is going to be different from someone. But when you forcing yourself to bend and groove, it's the same thing. Like, learning to say no to some clients. Yes. It's like, or releasing aspects of your work. Like, I've just been through a whole shift in my business and it was scary. Like, I'm not doing any styling anymore because, there's so many.
Except for me, right, Ange? Except for me, right?
God, I got you back. Of course. But like, you know what I mean? Like where I don't know. It's where, and that's where you start to feel in your body. That to me is like that big ding where I'm like, oh, I actually physically feel it. So that's that struggle I find. And I love that you're like the best person to chat with it. It's like when you can just show up, and if you're like, I feel inspired and called to share this today, I'm not going to check, and I understand there's strategy, and I love a strategy because there are things that's the side of the brain where I'm like,
sure.
instructions, this can help. But when we can infuse that, where no matter what, and that goes back to what you were saying, is that why?
Yes.
Why are you sharing that? Because you feel like you have to you have to post it all week, so now you have to, and then you just put some shit out there, and then you wonder why.
Great point.
Perform well, but then you're also, why are you measuring it that way? What's your form of measurement? Is it likes? What do you need? What does that say about you? So it's, and like, I love what you said. You're like, I don't actually need to. It's great to be in a place where you don't need to. And again, some people are not there. We still need to market and grow. But when we do it from a place that it's exciting, where it's like, and that's the have tos and the get tos. I get to use a free platform and show my personality and and teach. And if someone didn't see it, well, I'm going to try it again. What do I got to lose?
Yeah, I mean, what you just said is my worst nightmare because I'm such an introvert. But easy for me to say. So here's this really cool thing where I couldn't always figure out why I had fear and reticence around social media posts. So, I mean, I'm a writer. It should be my ilk, right? I don't really care what I look like. So although I love accessories, when I didn't care what I look like and I wasn't so in love with accessories, which I am now because it moves through, right? You move through these cycles. I wonder why I was so hesitant. Writing has given me the luxury of only publishing my last draft. This is a big thing for folks who are creatives. And there is the first draft to the 5th draft. There's also the 500th draft. And writing is never done. But it's okay to, and I think there's a person who I follow online, I think it's Helen Perry, and I think Helen Perry's line, and I hope I don't have her name wrong, but I think she even has a podcast for creatives that's something like put the fucking post out, like just fucking press publish.
Right.
This is a big deal for me. I put mistakes out all the time in my social media posts. And I now take it as a badge of honor because I found out that I have gotten over the last draft. I'm a published author who loves to be edited. I am a professional developmental editor for people. I want them to show up the way they want. But I'd never have this idea that you can be done because that implies perfect, because that implies that we are not a work in progress, and I am not okay with that. I want the authenticity of, I had to get this out, I shot this out. Here's what it is today. Okay, I delete sometimes, but and I have my sister love. I have the control to, and I have the control to go back and edit and put in, an E where I should have had an A or whatever that is. But
God forbid.
God forbid, right?
I remember that post with that.
That's right. Patty had a typo.
I'm so obsessed with criticizing everybody else's typos because I have the time to do that.
Yes.
Said no one ever.
Said no one ever. And
I always said this before, that we most likely spend more time on scrolling our own feed than we do others.
Yes.
Because we're
100%.
so critical of ourselves.
100%. Yeah, and that's why, later I will not delete the blue beret photo, and now everybody on your podcast is going over to Patti M to look at the blue beret, right? And you're going to see if I bothered to post anything.
Don't worry, this is going to be the cover art for this episode.
Right? Patty's in her blue beret. This whole thing about multiple drafts, moving to, I hate the word perfection, but moving to an end state. We are works in progress. That's the human connection. If we weren't, we wouldn't need each other. Conveying the message of, I'm a little more broken today, I'm a little less broken today, I've got space for you, you've got space for me. That's the only reason that we bother even having conversations. So if we can't show up with this is my why today, I'm coming because I'm overwhelmed, or this is my why today, I got extra space today, I could carry anybody. I slept last night, I am the human carrier pigeon today. Y'all need something, you call Patty today, great day to call Patty. But you know what, next week when I'm getting on a plane and I'm jet lagged because I just landed in Iceland, I am going to be zapped. I'm going to be able to hold the pen up at a writing workshop. That's all I'm going to have. So how about showing up as you are today? Because tomorrow you're going to need the person that shows up for you.
If I could drop this microphone, I would.
Ow.
That, I mean, again,
but and you know where I started. You have seen me for years, and this stuff used to matter. And it isn't just because I've had extraordinary expansion in my business the last few years. It's that I have fallen head over heels in love with women-owned businesses, anyone-owned businesses that's going through the struggle of showing up the way they want to. Right. And I'll tell you, you know what? I got a lot of guys, I got a lot of trans folks in my orbit.
Yeah.
And the rules are a lot tougher for them right now, I'm going to say, for my male male clients and for my trans clients, and I'll tell you why. Because we've been focusing a lot of attention on women and female identifying humans. We've been focusing a lot on us getting to show up how we need to, particularly on the internet.
Yes.
It's time to flip that script and go back to having a good day for all of us, regardless of gender and expression. And let's take it back to selfhood. I think we get a lot of attention. I think we deserve it, those identifying as female, but I got to tell you, there are a lot of folks finding it a lot tougher. My male clients right now don't know how to show up in particular because they feel so self-conscious.
Right.
And I feel for that when they say to me, hey, should I put myself on the cover of my book? It's like, yeah, you probably shouldn't, dude. You probably shouldn't if you have this feeling. If you're questioning it, don't. So I am all for you just show up. And I follow a lot of influencers really closely who are on a gender expression journey because what have we done? And those are the people that I got nothing but space for, because I've gotten the attention the last 5 years to empower myself as a woman identifying in this space. I've had a lot of attention, but I want to make space for everybody else now. And so you just show up any way you want to.
Yeah,
I own the privilege that I have been empowered by getting the attention I needed in this space. Now I want to give it to everybody else.
I'm loving that you said that, because I had this crisis of conflict the other day. I said to my husband, I'm writing new copy for a new piece of my website, and obviously even in my title of this podcast, it's like, for ambitious women in business.
Yeah.
And I had this thought, I was just watching one of your reels, and you were like, how people get their best ideas in the shower, yours is in the car, mine's on my walk.
Yeah.
And I walk every day, and I had this kind of thought that, I don't know, it was like a download. I'm like, I would never want to exclude someone just because they don't identify as she, her, a woman. And I thought, I'm all about inclusion. And I thought, I got to really investigate this a little bit more, because again, that influence that we see of like, you got to niche down. The riches are in the niches, like all the influence. And we're all susceptible to it, right? We're so vulnerable in so many ways still. And I'm trying to be more aware of it. And so I'm really glad you said that, because that's something that I'm trying to really work out. And I might even change my intro, because I'm like, yes, it's my majority women in my programming, because but if someone's attracted to me in a way of like, I think you could be the person that can fill that need of what I have to offer. I don't give a shit what you identify as. I want to embrace him. Like, I want to get to like, where is the block? How can I help?
And I mean, in my case, I love you even more, because it's in the struggle that we redefine the connection we can make to other people. And I own my privilege, probably not as often as I should, in all the ways across the board. I was really, really self-conscious putting my first book out into the world, because I have a white male child that lives in Canada where healthcare is provided, and I knew that we had a journey that was very, very exclusive because of the privilege. I found him doctors. Why? Because I had the internet, because I had the education, because when I showed up, I knew that I expressed myself in a way that was going to get attention. But then I decided that's never going to happen again, because there are people who need me to say it might have been this easy in a difficult environment for me. But just tell me what you need, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to scream it from the rooftops. So I mumble and I bumble around about how to help people. So I always say, if you think I'm your person, you think I got something you can use, you bring it and you tell me how to do it in a way that serves you. I only know the life that I know. I only know the skin I'm in. And that's not enough, but it's the place that I start from in service. And I say to my clients all the time, if you catch me doing it, just correct me, because I want to get this right for you. And that's the open door of, I don't speak your language, the open door of, I can't embody your gender experience. I can't embody your racism, your sexism, and in my world, sizeism. I can't embody that. So yeah, I bumble a lot. And the criticism comes up a lot of, aren't you fortunate to be able to say this? And all I can say is, it's the only experience I know. But you are helping individuals in business. You're helping humans in business. If the door that you open was the beginning of this podcast by saying, women, that's the skin you're in. That's what you know. And as you expand, and you will expand, you get to help whoever comes across your plate that you choose. So open the door however you have to. Be frail. Be making the mistakes all the time. This is what stories do. Because there is nothing more humbling than being able to say, this is the only story I have. This is the only story I have. And teach me yours, right?
Right.
Because then I won't make mistakes of offending people as often as I do. Because
Yeah.
we're all doing it. We're offending the
Absolutely.
shit out of each other every day.
And the difference is holding that space of like, please correct me. I welcome the
Please. Yes.
correction.
Yep.
I'm not offended, maybe embarrassed, but it comes from a place of, I didn't know,
Yep.
but I would like to know.
Yeah,
And
I would like to know. And
yeah.
I hope that we don't have to be torn down and correcting each other. But if it takes that, then we will, because I think that's exactly what we should be doing.
Yeah.
Is the burden of correcting one another, someone's got to, right? Think of how the teaching goes a long way. And I mean, that's a complete segue from, this is probably a whole other podcast, but the thing about storytelling is we feel like we don't have a right to share it, or like, who's going to want to hear my story? This is all we got. I can only tell the story of a white female who gave birth to these children through this kind of birth experience, and a genetic anomaly found its way into my family. That's all I got.
Right.
I'll start there. You bring yours. And community grows from the invitation to bring yours. That's what marketing, social media, and creativity can do. I forget that a lot and have to be reminded that if I don't open my mouth and create, no one else is going to feel like they can.
And that's holding that space and laying that foundation for others. And that's where, when you show up, in whatever capacity, even just here today, which I'm so grateful for having you here today, is giving that space and that permission. And I hope that
I love that word.
Listening can have that validation of, you have the permission to do so, and do it.
Yeah, and do it. And if you do regret it, just give it 24 hours and pull it down.
I always say to myself, am I going to think about this? How will I feel about this 2 weeks from now? Like, anytime I get that, or if you make a mistake, and then how will I feel in a month? How will I feel about this 1 year from now? And more often than not,
probably aren't going to care.
Probably won't be thinking about it. I don't know if that's a good coping mechanism, but
I don't know. I've pulled a couple of things down, but I've also watched a few famous writers experience gaffes and pull things down. And I've thought to myself, isn't it too bad that they pulled it down? Because now none of us can learn from that. So that writer is in particular, I'm thinking of a couple, and both of them in this case are female identifying, and they were torn down for things that were said. They deleted them. And then I thought, I don't even know what she said in the first place. I can't learn from that. It's gone.
Right.
So there is also the stand in it, own it, put a reel up the next day and go, oh my God, do you see what I did over there? But you know what? I talked to 100 new people as a result of what I did over there. And 2 of them told me that they will never be the same because of it. So if you're in service, that matters. If service is your game.
The ownership of it. Not the, let's just sweep that under the rug there.
Not to sweep it under the rug. Shame. No. Yeah. And I mean, of course, I'm now going to post something later, and it's going to have a great big gaffe in it. And all your people are going to go, oh my God, Patti, you did that thing. Did you do that intentionally? Yes, I did. I intentionally did that. Yes.
I love it. Well, I want to encourage everyone listening to connect with you. Even if you're full and that you can't work with Patti right now, but you're always going to learn something.
I've got cool stuff coming.
You do. So you do have your book, Loving Large, that is out there.
Yes, Loving Large is out there.
We have, may I say the title?
Yes, you may. Yes.
So Elements will be the new one.
Coming.
And when are we expecting that? Or you were saying
September. I decided September because it's a difficult time to launch anything in the summer, and I wanted to do some talks before then. So writing is a deepening experience based on the learning of the 4 elements that we live in nature.
I think we're going to have you be back here either, kind of towards end of August or September. Because I know what just blood, sweat, and tears that has been going into Elements. And I know, like, based on this conversation today, I could just talk to you all day. So we'll definitely have you back. But for now, can you just give the list of where people can connect with you? Because I want to make sure that they do.
Got it. Everything online is Patti M Hall, M as a memoir. So my website has a few freebies on it. I am starting to do talks. I do a ton of podcasting. So just pick me up there. If my Instagram doesn't have it, you can, if my Instagram doesn't have it, LinkedIn is a really clever way to find me because I repurpose a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. So Instagram and LinkedIn are my homes, and my website is slowly populating. But my writing book will come out in September, and that's something I'll do a lot of teaching. There's a webinar series, there's a journaling series. There's a lot that's rolling out with that, and it's a whole other version of my brand, as because you took me to the woods and made me Earth Mama in the woods with teal-colored smoke bombs and tapped into my fairy princess self.
Oh, I love the gosh, that was a day.
That was a day.
So good. Thank you so much for
my pleasure, Ange.
your knowledge, your enthusiasm, your style, and your voice. I honestly, I remember the first time I met on our first shoot years ago, and now to me, you're the type. Nothing has changed. I mean, only for the better. Where there's just
you might be right.
You're Patti.
You might be right. Yep.
That's really refreshing.
Oh, thanks, Ange. You're the best.
You are.
Oh, you.